Hello, hello, hello! Hello, everyone. It is me, and we're here to film another video about folklore and tales of mythology and such from different cultures. So we did a video on African tales, we did a video with Japanese tales, and now we're going to do Irish tales. Okay? So I highly suggest you pick these books up. These are great books. This is not technically a part of the Epic Tales collection from which we've been reading, but as you can see, it's by the same publisher. They gave it the same fancy glossy cover, and it's still essentially folklore and mythology. So, Ireland, let's visit it. We're going to pick a story at random. I just opened up to The Legend of Knockgrafton. So that's what we're going to do. Never read it, so this is exciting. Okay, let's hope I don't get tongue-tied, because sometimes she does. Look at my cup, you guys. It's a football. Okay. Let's see. There once was a poor man who lived in the fertile glen of Ahirlo, at the foot of the gloomy Galtee Mountains. Oh my god. What if I read the whole story like this? And he had a great hump on his back. He looked just as if his body had been rolled up and placed upon his shoulders. Okay, anywho. And his head was pressed down with the weight so much that his chin, when he was sitting, rests upon his knee for support. Ooh, girl. The countrymen were rather shy of meeting him in any lonesome place. For though, poor creature, he was as harmless and as inoffensive as a newborn infant, yet his deformity was so great that he scarcely appeared to be a human creature, and some ill-minded persons had set strange stories about him afloat. He was said to have a great knowledge of herbs and charms, but certain it was that he had a mighty skillful hand in plaiting straws and rushes into hats and baskets, which was the way he made his livelihood. Isn't that how it always goes? Seriously? Like, the people who have, like, mental and physical disabilities or illnesses are always shunned to the edge of society, but then they're also seen as, like, the people with the most, like, inherent knowledge of witchcraft and magic. It's just crazy how that works in ancient cultures. Anywho. Lusmore, for that was the nickname put upon him by the reason of his always wearing a sprig of it in his fairy cap. Lusmore is foxglove. Because he always wore a sprig of it in his fairy cap, or his little straw hat, and he would always get a higher penny for his plaited work than anyone else, and perhaps that was the reason why someone, out of envy, had circulated the strange stories about him. Be that as it may, it happened that he was returning home one evening from the pretty town of Cahir, towards Kapa, and as little Lusmore walked very slowly, on account of the great hump upon his back, it was quite dark when he came to the old moat of Knockgrafton. So, this is my same cat. He's begging for attention. His name is Lucky. I'll just give him a moment. Lucky. The things we do for our children. Okay, Lucky, I've got to finish the story. Okay. Anywho, what were we saying? He was walking down the road. It was very dark, and he came upon the moat around, I suppose, the city of Knockgrafton, right? So, okay, here we go. So he came to the old moat of Knockgrafton, which stood on the right-hand side of his road. Tired and weary was he, and nowadays comfortable in his own mind at thinking how much further he had to travel, and that he should be walking all the night. So he sat down under the moat to rest himself, and began looking mournfully enough up to the moon. Presently there arose a wild strain of unearthly melody upon the ear of little Lusmore. He listened, and he thought that he had never heard such ravishing music before. It was like the sound of many voices, each mingling and blending with the others so strangely, that they seemed to be one, though all singing different strains, And the words of the song were these: Da luen da mort, da luen da mort, da luen da mort. Then there would be a moment's pause, and then the round of melody went on again. Lusmore listened attentively, scarcely drawing his breath, lest he might lose the slightest note. He now plainly perceived that the singing was within the mote, and though at first it had charmed him so much, he began to get tired of hearing the same round sung over and over, without any change. So, availing himself of the pause, when the Da luen da mort had been sung 3 times, he took up the tune, and raised it with the words Agus da Karin, and then went on singing with the voices inside of the mote, Da luen da mort, finishing the melody, and when the pause again came, with Agus da Karin. The fairies within Knockgrafton, for the song was a fairy melody, when they heard this addition to the tune, were so much delighted that with instant resolve it was determined to bring the mortal among them, whose musical skill so far exceeded theirs, and little Lusmore was conveyed into their company with the eddying speed of a whirlwind. Glorious to behold was the sight that burst upon him as he came down the moat, twirling around and round with the lightness of a straw, to the sweetest music that kept time to his motion. The greatest honor was then paid him, for he was put above all the musicians, and he had servants tending upon him, and everything to his heart's content, and a hearty welcome to all, and in short, he was made as much of as if he had been the first man in the land. Presently, Lusmore saw a great consultation going forward among the fairies, and notwithstanding all their civility, he felt very much frightened till one stepping out from the rest came up to him and said, See, they really rushed this story all of a sudden, but okay. Lusmore, Lusmore, doubt not nor deplore, for the hump which you bore on your back is no more. Look down on the floor and view it, Lusmore. When these words were said, poor little Lusmore felt himself so light and so happy that he could have been bounded at one jump over the moon, like the cow in the history of the Cat and the Fiddle, and he saw with inexpressible pleasure his hump tumbled down upon the ground from his shoulders. He then tried to lift up his head, and he did so with becoming caution, fearing that he might knock it against the ceiling of the grand hall where he was. Okay, so these are wee folk fairy. He looked around and round again with greatest wonder and delight upon everything which appeared more and more beautiful, and overpowered at beholding such a resplendent scene. His head grew dizzy, and his eyesight became dim. At last he fell into a sound sleep, and when he awoke he found it was broad daylight, the sun shining brightly, and the birds singing sweetly, and that he was lying just at the foot of the moat of Knockgrafton, with the cows and sheep grazing peacefully around him. The first thing Lusmore did after saying his prayers was to put his hand behind to feel for the hump, but there was no sign of what was once there on his back, and he looked at himself with great pride, for he had now become a well-shaped, dapper little fellow, and more than that, found himself into a full suit of new clothes, which he concluded the fairies had made for him. Towards Kappa he went, stepping out as lightly and springing up at every step as if he had been all his life a dancing master. Not a creature who met Lusmore knew him without his hump, and he had a great work to persuade everyone that he was the same man, but in truth he was not the same man, so far as outward appearance went. Of course it was not long before the story of Lusmore's hump got about, and a great wonder was made of it. Through the country for miles around it was the talk of everyone, high and low. One morning as Lusmore was sitting contented enough at his cabin door, up came an old woman to him, and asked him if he could direct her to Kappa. I need to give you no directions, my good woman, said Lusmore, for this is Kappa, and whom may you want here? I have come, said the woman, out of DC's country, out of DC's country, in the county of Waterford, looking for one Lusmore, who I have heard tell had his hump taken off by the fairies. For there is a son of a gossip of mine, who has got a hump on him that will be his death, and maybe it could use the same charm as Lusmore. The hump may be taken off, may be taken off him. And now I have told you the reason of my coming so far. 'Tis to find out about this charm if I can. Lusmore, who was ever a good-natured little fellow, told the woman all the particulars. How he had raised the tune of the fairies at Knockgrafton. How his hump had been removed from his shoulders. How he had got a new suit of clothes in the bargain. The woman thanked him very much, and then went away quite happy and easy in her own mind. When she came back to her gossip's house in the county of Waterford, she told her everything that Lusmore had said. It's a weird way to say that. And they put the little humped-back man, who was a peevish and cunning creature from his birth, upon a car, and took him all the way across the country. It was a long journey, but they did not care for that. Just so long as the hump was taken off of him, and they brought him just at nightfall, and left him under the old moat of Knockgrafton. Jack Madden, for that was the humpy man's name, had not been sitting there long, when he heard the tune going on with the moat much sweeter than before, for the fairies were singing it in the way Lusmore had settled the music for them, and the song was going on. Daluain de mort, Daluain de mort, Daluain de mort, August Acadine. Sure, I guess that's how it went. I just brought that up. Without ever stopping, Jack Madden, who was in a great hurry to get quit of his hump, never thought of waiting until the fairies had done, for watching for a fit opportunity to raise the tune higher again than Lusmore had. So having heard them singing it over 7 times, it's always 7, y'all, 7's a magical number, 7 times without stopping, out he bawls, never minding the timing or the humor of the tune, or how he could bring his words in properly. Augusta Cadine, Augusta Hina, thinking that if one day was good, 2 were better, and that if Lusmore had 1 new suit of clothes given to him, he should have 2. See, he's going and getting greedy. No sooner had the words passed his lips that he was taken up and whisked into the moat with prodigious force, and the fairies came crowding around him with great anger, screeching and screaming and roaring out, "Who spoiled our tune? Who spoiled our tune?" And one stepped up to him above all the rest and said, Jack Madden, your word came so bad in. The tune felt we glad in, this castle you're had in, that your life we may sadden. Here's 2 humps for Jack Madden. And 2 of the strongest fairies brought Lusmore's hump and put it down upon poor Jack's back, over his own hump, where it became fixed as firmly as if it was nailed on with 12-penny nails, by the best carpenter that ever drove one. Out of their castle then they kicked him, and in the morning when Jack Madden's mother and her gossip came to look out after the little man, they found him half dead, lying at the foot of the moat, with the other hump upon his back. Well, to be sure, how they did look at each other, but they were afraid to say anything, lest a hump might be put upon their own shoulders. Home they brought the unlucky Jack Madden, with him as downcast in their hearts, and their looks as ever 2 gossips were, and what the weight of his other hump, and his long journey. He died soon after, leaving, they say, his heavy curse to anyone who would go to listen to fairy tunes again. Well, don't be interrupting people singing. Ongoing themes in mythology. When the spirits are doing something, don't interrupt them unless they invite you in. Don't assert yourself into a spirit's business, be it a fairy or not. Just don't do it. Don't do it. It worked out for Lusmore because he did it at the end. They sang over and over and over and over, and he waited to the end of their song before it started again and added in his own thing. He didn't just throw it in there while they were still singing. And he didn't do it out of the intent of like, well, I'm going to get way more than this guy had. He didn't do it out of greed, of like wanting something from them. Lusmore did it innocently. Intentions are everything in magic and when working with the spirits. And they know. You can try to hide your intentions, but they know. Well. Irish fairy tales. Interesting. That was a fun little story. Thanks for listening, you guys. And be sure to check out the African video and the Japanese video. And stay tuned because I'm going to keep doing these. And goodbye.